So the agency came to us with the idea of creating 3 commercials which featured 3 different monsters that followed you around. That was the amount of waste that you created a year by not recycling certain items and not being resourceful when buying products from supermarkets. And it was all about making people conscious about these decisions to help reduce it. And if you did this throughout all your shopping and at work and in the home, then you would potentially halve this amount of waste per year. So the idea was to have this garbage monster following this person around and being this kind of annoying annoying younger brother almost following you around. The idea was, as this person made these choices throughout the commercials, that it would shrink at the end to create this much smaller monster, which was the idea that you had halved your amount of waste. The 3 films were Office, which featured a monster predominantly made out of paper, a Supermarket, which was made out of more supermarket objects, and then Compost, which was made out of peelings. So the concept art, they came to us with a rough idea of what they wanted, and we had Andrew Brooks, our concept artist, develop these drawings over a series of weeks, backwards and forwards from the agency, working out how big they wanted this monster to be, how much it was going to be made out of, how big the arms were, the facial features. We got towards the end where we're just making minor adjustments of kind of the feet size and how it would walk, and then this came into the 3D side, which Dean and Vicky were looking at, was how this monster would animate, if it would be slow, or how it would move, if it would be more of a heap or if there'd be more of a character behind him. Me and Dean went on the shoot with Jay, our producer. The stand-in guy to get the performance was a guy called Guion, and he just had so much character, and he was a really good actor, and straight away there was kind of getting this really nice comic performance between the actor and Jerome. And this really helped to make the whole film flow and gave us a great performance. And also he was a really good height, which we needed to have for the actor's eye line, so that every time he looked around or was looking around at places, that he was looking actually near enough the height of the monster would actually be. On the shoot, the main thing for us to get back to help us to comp this CG monster when we got back was to make sure we had a reference. So we made a board up that contained lots of objects: Coke cans, plastic bottles, plastics, banana skins, apple cores, a big board. And after every scene, we shot this kind of board going around up and down, just to give us all the specular highlights and the reflections, and to just so that when we got back to comp, we had a perfect reference for every scene of how this garbage should look in the scenario.
So once we'd got the concept down, and everyone was happy with it, we knew we got to a certain point where we had to get into 3D and design it in there, because there's only so much we could do with the matte painting. We knew we all liked the design, we knew it worked, we had a few things that everyone was really, really happy with, a few designs. So we took it into 3D and put all the objects onto the monster just to really see what it'd look like in 3D, because the concept art always looks really nice, but it doesn't necessarily work in the 3D space. Before that, we started work on how the monster was actually going to physically move with all this garbage on it. There was a few discussions about whether we were going to actually just make it fully out of garbage, using particle systems to make it all roll around, or whether it was more of a solid mass of objects in the shape of this garbage monster. We finally went for what we thought would look and work best, which was just to have a shape of a monster underneath, which drives all the garbage on top. So what we did was we just had a very simple shape like an arm, and then we got all of these objects which we'd modelled and textured, and then placed those on the surface with hairs, and then the hairs then drove the garbage, which allowed it all to bounce around and shake, and when it moved around, the surface drove where that all went. And then even with the shrinking, we still used the same hair system to actually make the objects disappear. We were quite lucky in that we sort of just had a little play around with the UV sets and actually just scaled down the UVs, which actually made the objects all disappear off the arm, because as soon as the hairs disappear off the UV set, they just disappear and go back to the origin.
The compositing kind of involves 2 main stages. So the first thing we had to do was to remove the actor stand-in from all the plates. He was a big guy dressed in an amusing blue suit. And then the main part of compositing is to get all the renders that the 3D people give us and make them look as real as possible. So it's kind of like adding the final touches, really. There was lots of red bleed, for instance, in the actual plate, so we would do things like create a little effect that goes over the 3D to mimic that effect, just little things to bed it in, just stuff like that. Me and Michael and Ali would work quite closely with the people lighting and rendering, and it's just a kind of to and froing process of how you can get it to look as absolutely photoreal as possible.